Joining me in the studio is Charlotte Lamb. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, Monty.
And Charlotte, Ukraine's drones have all but choked off a shipping route that carries a quarter of Russia's wheat, and that problem is going well beyond the battlefield.
It certainly is. Ukraine says it struck more oil and cargo ships in the Sea of Azov, and shipping there has now been restricted for a third day. Up to a quarter of Russia's wheat exports pass through that sea. Russia is the world's biggest wheat exporter, and analysts and international organisations have long warned about the risks the war poses to the global grain trade. One consultancy forecasts that grain exports in July will be about 2.3 million metric tonnes, compared to 2.7 million in June. For example, in the peak months, typically shipments top 5 million. This is, of course, all part of Ukraine's accelerating campaign to target the industries funding Moscow's war and its rebounding on Russia at home. Kyiv's drones have knocked out a large share of Russian refining capacity. So last week, Moscow banned diesel exports until the end of the month, and that really rattled global energy markets as Russia supplies 11% of the world's diesel. Taking that off the table sent prices soaring, even in countries that no longer buy from Moscow. And that shortage is biting hardest at home. In the Russian-annexed Crimea, petrol has hit a record. Prices have roughly quadrupled, around €4 a litre. Stations are now capping how much you buy and are banning canisters. Let's hear from some drivers.
20 litres is not enough. Even to get from work to work and so on. It's not enough. I just drove around and I couldn't find a single station.
There are so many problems. I need to take my child to school. It's very difficult. The gas doesn't last long. Very little.
Personally, 20 liters lasts me a week, and I stand in lines like this from 7 a.m. until 12.
To France, and as we heard earlier, President Emmanuel Macron used his address to the armed forces to warn Europe against going alone on defence. So let's take a look at the figures. He confirmed France will hit a €64 billion defence budget by 2027, 3 years earlier than planned, and double what it was when he took office in 2017. An extra $36 million is earmarked between now and 2030. The increase has come amid a Europe-wide rearmament. This is a drive aimed at countering the threat from Russia, sending weapons to Ukraine and making the continent less reliant on the US. But the money is arriving faster than the factories can keep up. Macron told French arm makers that they are not producing fast enough and wants Europe to start building together. Take a listen.
We'd be wrong to think that the realities of today will still hold true in 10, 15 or 20 years' time, and that no competitors will emerge. So let's move forward with the new generation of air defense systems, with early warning systems, with long-range fire where we must develop our own solutions. Let's move forward with our battle tanks. Let's move forward with multiple projects that will allow us to make Europe a reality in industrial terms and in practice.
Well, staying in Europe, the EU says that European donors have put €900 million, some $1 billion on the table to help initial recovery efforts in war-torn Gaza as its economy nears collapse, which sounds like a lot until you see the bill. The UN, the World Bank and the EU all put the cost of reconstruction at $70 billion. The pledges come after a donors' meeting in Brussels. It also brought together the head of the Board of Peace set up by US President Donald Trump. Diplomats, they debated how to answer rising Israeli settler violence in the occupied West Bank. Among the options on the table is cutting off trade with Israeli settlements altogether. And finally, in this business wrap, the US government has already paid back tens of billions of dollars in tariffs it collected before the Supreme Court ruled them illegal. That's according to budget figures released Monday. Tariff taxes on imported goods have been a key part of President Trump's game economic plan since he took office again. But in February, the Supreme Court shut down a big chunk of the extra tariffs Trump ordered, forcing the government to return money to the companies that had paid them. According to the budget data, the US has paid out $81 billion in tariff refunds since October 2025, compared to just $5 billion during the same stretch last year. And Monty, that's your business wrap.